Welcome to All You Need to Know About Project Cortex webinar series with KnowledgeLake, Microsoft, and Xillio. My name is Alistair Pugin. I'm the official moderator for the conversations that we've been having over the last 2 weeks with a bunch of industry experts, some people from Microsoft, and today I've got Rickard Engels on the show to welcome everyone to this webinar series.
Thank you, Alistair. I'm very pleased to be here. So let me explain why we are so excited about Cortex. Since our start in 2004, our goal has been to break down silos and to unlock the value of content. And we have tried our best during the many migrations we did by cleaning and enhancing the metadata, but it's actually often an uphill battle. Projects started driven by a combination of cost savings, compliance, and better collaboration. But during a project, the three ambitions often conflicted. And it was always cost savings that won the battle. The actual statement was just make sure we do not have to renew the legacy license again. With Cortex, this all changes. We recently received an RFP, for instance, from a defense agency wanting to replace OpenText with Microsoft 365. The RFP read, there are overlapping features, we don't want to pay double, please migrate. This is of course doing Cortex short, but it's 1000% true. Why pay double? But as you will learn in this webinar, Cortex is a lot more. Cortex allows for a new way of working, providing intelligence across your information landscape, breaking down silos and unlocking the value of content. In short, it's better collaboration, it's better compliance with the easiest business case in the world.
Is better than traditional enterprise content management. On today's show or part of this webinar, we have Ian Story and Naomi Moneypenny, both from Microsoft. Ian, just a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, what your star sign is.
Awesome. So I don't actually know what my star sign is. That's a hard one. I was born in September, so my birthday's in a couple weeks. It would have been at Ignite, actually, so I think. Anyway, so I'm part of the leadership team for SharePoint and OneDrive. I'm responsible for how our team works with customers, with business partners, and industry analysts. I'm also on the board of directors for AIM. Have been in this industry for more than 20 years. As a customer for about a dozen of those years, working at a competitor of Microsoft's for a few years, and now here at Microsoft for the last 4.
All right. And Naomi, we've known each other for a bit.
Just a little while, Master, yes. So I remember you before the elevator selfies. Does that count? It's all good. Naomi Moneypenny, for the folks that I don't know already, I have the distinct privilege of leading the product team for Project Cortex. And that includes the work that we're doing in the content services space, in the knowledge and topic experiences space, and Microsoft Search inside of SharePoint and OneDrive.
And you've spent a lot of time working with SharePoint in general, right? It's not a new thing for you. I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely not a new thing. So let's see. I've been working with SharePoint since, actually, it's not that long. It's the beta of 2010, which was out in 2009.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
That's not old as many people in the SharePoint land here. But it's definitely been a passion for me for a very long time. And it's always been the work that I've done previously before joining Microsoft. When I was an MVP, like Alistair, I was able to always work on collaboration and knowledge inside of systems. And really, at that time, still applying some of the coolest AI that was around. So we worked a lot on expertise detection, think about vectors of information coming together. And so it's really interesting to me that the work that I'm doing at Microsoft really helps to reflect all of that journey that has led up to.
Yeah, I think I coined the phrase or stole the phrase from Heather Newman saying from Tahoe to today.
Yeah.
Right? That's pretty much the world. My name is Alistair Pugin. I'm an advocate for Xillio. I'm working with KnowledgeLake on this journey about Project Cortex and how to make your enterprise content management migrations simple. So moving from products like all the OpenText products like LiveLink, Hummingbird, and so forth, so on, moving that to SharePoint Online. Today, I just want to talk to the two of you a little bit about where Microsoft is going. I mean, we've seen Project Cortex launched last year at Ignite and all the artificial intelligence baked into the back of that. But I also think it's a precursor. And I love this because I remember reading a white paper that Microsoft put out in February of 2006 about wanting to play with the big boys. Right? It was talking about MOS 2007 and ECM is the new white paper. Well, it was a white paper about ECM and how Microsoft is bringing enterprise content management to the masses through the use of SharePoint. That's even before SharePoint Online. Now, naturally, we know, and over the last 2-3 years, we've had AIM, Gartner, and Microsoft get together and literally say, well, ECM is dead, long live content services. This is the new world that we are now faced with. They've taken the same diagram that was from the ECM 101 poster, repurposed that and gave it different colors and new words, but yet we'll still have the same approach. So Ian, from your side, you mentioned earlier on that you sit on the board with John Mancini at AIM, and what is AIM's take on content services? I mean, we've seen a lot from Chris McNulty talk about what is content services, driving the charter program, driving all of that goodness around bringing SharePoint Online to the new world of ECM or ECM 2.0. What is AIM's take? How did that whole story come about, to coin the phrase or to use
Sure.
the surname in that sense?
Yeah, there we go.
How did they storyboard the whole, well, we want content services, we no longer want ECM?
Yep. I think it was really Gartner who led the way with the content services definition and so forth. Forrester right there with them, talking about transactional content services and business content services and collaborative content services and so forth. I think, from the AIM perspective, AIM talks about intelligent information management as kind of the thing that you do with content services, right? So AIM breaks that down into 3 areas of automation, protection and privacy, and insights. And as you think about, content services are a set of capabilities essentially to allow you to store and manage and share and collaborate and publish and on and on and on, a whole bunch of different services. That's what Gartner would say when you look at the content services Magic Quadrant, and what Forrester would say as well when you look at the Forrester Wave. So AIM says, hey, that technology of content services is definitely, what we call ECM these days. But when we think about what it is that people actually do with those content services, what they do is they intelligently manage their information. So AIM calls it IIM, AIM being the Association for Intelligent Information Management, right? And that's part of the challenge is the E in ECM, the enterprise part. Folks have realized that this technology is useful for more than the Fortune 500 or the, 5 or 10,000 largest companies in the world. You look at folks even in the mid-sized and small business arena that need to, more easily manage their content, find what they need, et cetera. And you find that, ECM maybe was a little bit exclusive because it implied enterprise, and nobody really loves the idea of.
All right, Naomi, you've been building intranets and applications and on top of SharePoint for as long as I know you. The impact of content services and Project Cortex on your life. I mean, you've moved now across, sort of slid across to a different role and started doing things on the AI side and driving the Project Cortex engagement with customers as well as other MVPs. What's your take on where Microsoft is going with Cortex and traditional intranets? I mean, you look at the SharePoint Lookbook and that entire provisioning engine. Where is Microsoft going with this?
I think it really is that evolution of intelligence wherever people want to consume it inside of their organizations. I think that's what's very powerful. When I listen to Ian talk about content services, it's really about having those platform of capabilities and having them really be consumed in lots of different places wherever you're getting your work done. And I think that's kind of the major shift that's happened, whether it's the intranet, whether it's the way that we work. We used to be very siloed, right, within an application of like, I just live in Outlook or I just live in SharePoint or wherever it happened to be. And so now you're really seeing that, folks are working collaboratively across multiple different kinds of services. They need to be able to consume the information wherever they are, whether it's information, whether it's the knowledge, whether it's this information coming into their organizations, connecting in lots of other data sources. And so you're seeing that whole thing happen, I think, between the types of applications that we build for people to do collaboration, but also coming together with business processes inside of your organization. So in my job where I lead Project Cortex, right, I lead the product development strategy and I look at sort of the future trends. And we talk a lot to customers. We talk to customers that are part of Project Cortex and part of Microsoft. We also talk to customers that have nothing to do with Microsoft, right? And so it's really interesting to learn from them and to see what their top priorities still are. And so we get this kind of balance of demands. And so I see the things people are asking for, well, I need to have a better way to do contracts processing, or I need to have a better way to process lots of information that's coming inside of my organization. And yet still the top needs that we hear about are peer-to-peer sharing. How do I identify expertise in my organization? How do I help people get up to speed faster? And so these are all tasks that both your intranet had, but it's also now every application that you interact with has. And so how do we make sure that that information, that knowledge is being brought forth in every single situation that you need as just part of your everyday work?
With Project Cortex, Ian, how do you see Microsoft addressing content services specific to Project Cortex?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Naomi hit on when we think about the old way that ECM was used, it said enterprise, but it often wasn't enterprise. It was really departmental, and there were a lot of silos. Different studies that have been done by the different analysts talk about, there were 15 or 20 different repositories on average in a decent-sized organization, maybe more in a very large organization. And so it wasn't as enterprise as the name would imply. I think the opportunity with Cortex is really to consolidate a lot of that, get everyone working together. That's one of the great strengths of Microsoft with the heritage we have in Microsoft Office and Outlook, and now with Microsoft Teams and so forth, get everyone really working together and collaborating. And that's where, consolidating a lot of legacy systems into Cortex, whether those are things that you have on premises or things that you have in other cloud providers, getting all of that information together so that you can work together and more easily find things and collaborate. I think that's really the promise of Cortex as we look at the capabilities that we're bringing and being able to mine and pull in information from other systems, or as Xillio and KnowledgeLake do, migrate those other systems.
Last question on your side, Naomi. What's your favorite Project Cortex feature? Do you have one? Is it possible to have one? Just one?
No, it isn't. It really isn't. It would be like picking amongst my favorite children, and that would be terrible. So I would be an awful parent if I did that. But no, I think let me see. So if I think about the content understanding side, which is really where we're concentrating on in this conversation. So I think just the ability for folks to create models themselves, right? So say I'm a subject matter expert and I run a business process, like I'm processing contracts or I'm processing, purchase orders coming in or statements of work, that kind of stuff. The power that we are giving to be able to create new AI models to process the information and the way that you think about it is incredible. And I realize that it's not a simple task, right? This is not something as like, oh, click, 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 and I'm done, right? You're going to invest an hour, maybe 2 hours into actually building a model that can really help you. But I think that once you do that, it's incredible because not only do you get the use of that model for that specific business process, other people can come in and contribute on top of it. And then the great thing is that knowledge that was in your head about how to read a contract and what's valuable is actually then encoded into a model. And so that model becomes a form of knowledge, a new form of knowledge inside of your organization. And so we've got this path that goes from content services. How do I process information come in? How do I make things more efficient, more productive, saving me time and saving me money? And then how do I help you transform that into knowledge that's reusable inside of your organization? And so I think it's just incredibly powerful direction. And it really, it echoes the direction and journey that we've been on for a very long time. It's just that now the technology can actually deliver on these.
Yeah. Ian, one last question. Cortex has the ability to really break down these silos and replace departmental content management systems into a company-wide solution. Is this really the new way Microsoft's seeing the world working?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen customers just over and over and over trying to integrate these systems together, trying to make them work with their ERP system or their CRM system and so forth, and really struggling, having to become development shops in themselves just to continue to upgrade and maintain their different repositories of content. I talk to friends that still work on the customer side, and they talk to me about, we were up till 2 a.m. patching our systems, and we have to do that again this weekend because we've got another system, and we have to do it again next weekend because we've got another system, and so forth. It's taken IT from really driving value to just maintaining all these different systems and trying to keep them working together and linked together and so forth. And so we think get those old on-prem and cloud systems and get those consolidated into Cortex. We can obviously do things to search and crawl that content and pull that content in with a lot of the work that Naomi's team is doing. But when we talk about really what you can do to save your company money and get your IT back to really driving value instead of just patching things all night, all weekend, every week, we think that there's a great opportunity again using the technology and tools that Xillio and KnowledgeLake make to bring that content into Project Cortex, into Microsoft 365, and much more easily collaborate and work with it.
I'd just like to thank both of you for spending some time with me today, and we'll chat to everyone soon. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Welcome to All You Need to Know About Project Cortex. My name is Alistair Pugin, and I'm your host. And on today's show, we've got Rebecka. How do I say your surname? I don't know how to pronounce that surname.
English pronunciation, Isaksson, is fine.
Okay, so the K's not an issue, right?
No, it's that song, but you can say Isaksson. I listen to that.
And then we've got the traveling Wolverine at the bottom there, Chris McNulty.
Alistair, as always, good to catch up. How are you?
I'm good. Chris, from your side, just a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, why there are hay bales in your background, and is it still Kansas where you are?
So great to see everyone. I'm Chris McNulty. I'm Director of Product Marketing on the Microsoft 365 team, which means I'm privileged to get to work with the folks who are responsible for Project Cortex, something we have been working on for the past 3 years, and we're really excited to be finally taking the wraps off of it, coming up at Microsoft Ignite and beyond. So I am based in the Seattle area. In ordinary times, I'm usually on the Redmond campus. Today I'm at my house about 10 minutes away. Behind me is a selection of one of my myriad of photographs from my 4 trips across the country for family members this summer. So the good news about coronavirus, if there is a silver lining to it, is it's gotten me out to see places like Montana and Kansas and Nebraska that I ordinarily am just glimpsing through the window of an airliner. So great to be here today.
Rebecka, a bit about you.
Yeah, I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager on the same team as Chris, but my responsibility is knowledge in Microsoft 365. So I'm really looking at knowledge and knowledge solutions, knowledge business value across the Microsoft 365 suite. So that's obviously Project Cortex, our hero, that I am personally super excited about because I have been in knowledge management and in the knowledge space for a while now and haven't seen anything like it. But I'm also focused on SharePoint, Microsoft Search, Yammer, and Stream.
Yeah, we did earlier.
Stockholm, Sweden.
So, Chris, Project Cortex, right? When I think Project Cortex, I think you. So what is Project Cortex really? I mean, you've driven this huge resurgence of what I like to call ECM 2.0, or the rest of the world, including AIM and Gartner, calling it content services. So what is Project Cortex at its core?
So great question. So when we launched Project Cortex 3 years ago, we've been looking around our product mix, studying analyst reports, talking to our customers, and we recognize that we did have an opportunity to do more with content and content management. And despite the fact that we're proud of how we sit in the analyst rankings year over year, seeing continuous progress, we knew that the cloud transformations that many of our customers have joined us on during the past decade is bringing some new capabilities to light that would let us do more with things like using AI to deal with capture and content classification to build a much richer set of capabilities around the patterns and practices that had already been established earlier with Microsoft SharePoint. So this being Microsoft, we are customer driven, and we've had lots of focus groups and preview programs and one-on-one customer interviews. My colleague in engineering, Naomi Moneypenny, and I have spoken to hundreds of customers in the past 3 years. And along the way, we've really become convicted that people need to do more than just manage content. ECM in its best form, when John Mancini and AIM came up with the term ECM years ago, you're really talking about that set of capabilities to manage, orchestrate, capture, enrich, deliver, archive, and sustain and then delete information throughout its lifespan so it's most useful when it's most needed. And at its worst, it's a really expensive way to stick documents that no one ever wants to look at again. We know that there's so much more that we can do than just managing content for content's sake. And one thing that we're really convicted about is that content needs to be turned into knowledge. That being able to use content and the patterns that people establish working with it really informs a way that we can drive knowledge and insights forward to people as they need it through the applications they already have. And so Project Cortex is a broad range of investments to deliver these capabilities throughout Microsoft 365.
It's an interesting time for SharePoint, because at the root of Project Cortex, from a content repository perspective, SharePoint is still that place where you put things, and it's still there, right? But talking about knowledge and insights, and for me, having Microsoft sort of move into the knowledge management space, not just the portal space. Rebecka, you were mentioning something earlier on about knowledge and insights and where that is going with Microsoft, and you being part of the team now, you're talking a lot about a knowledge economy and how you can actually build on top of insights from a knowledge management perspective. Where do you see that in its current manifestation inside of Microsoft 365? Well,
I think, to take a look from the outside and in a little bit, where we're at right now, we've always been encountering changes in the marketplace, etc., right? And changes is not new. It happens all around us all the time. But in the last couple of years, it seems that change keeps hitting us with higher frequency and a lot bigger impact and much more random. So we've started talking a lot about that volatility that's all around us now. There's demographics changing, and there's pandemics, and there's, all of these things that we are painfully aware of on a personal, professional, and organizational level. So from our point of view, and the way we look at the importance of knowledge and insights and tying knowledge and insights together, is that for organizations to be able to adapt and to be flexible enough, to be agile enough to proactively try to counter some of those changes and reskill and upskill when those changes hit us, since they're not cyclical anymore, right? They're so random. We really have to empower the people in our organization, because that's the heart of our organization. So we need to empower them with the knowledge that they need when they need it, without forcing them to switch back and forth between different repositories and knowledge bases and applications and lose that important time and lose the focus. But it's not only pushing the knowledge to them, It's also enabling them with intelligent integrated search, because there are times when we don't know what we don't know, and that's great. We have something like Project Cortex that can now tell us that here's something that you should probably know about or that you are probably interested in. But we also have the intelligent integrated search, which is when we do know what we don't know. And then we need a quick way and a simple way to be able to look for that without being a search query expert or without having to know where to look for what or who to ask for what. So tying search and Cortex together, but then also bringing in the insights that we get through the Microsoft Graph. All of the signals that the graph pulls from who I'm working with, who I'm talking to, what I'm working on, and how it can help us identify patterns and practices that make some teams more productive and more efficient, more successful than others, but also for me on a personal level to help me manage my time better and help me understand what work practices and patterns that I myself have that might not be particularly healthy for me. Like, telling me that you've now worked every Saturday and Sunday for the last 2 months. You might want to book some focus time, so that you can get more work done throughout your normal hours, things like that. And that's where that whole power comes together in Microsoft 365.
So Project Cortex is not just about entity modeling and entity extraction, right? It's a bit more.
Sure, but that's definitely a great place to start talking about what we're bringing out into market. Cortex is covering a broad range of capabilities, and the first sets of capabilities coming out of Project Cortex are coming out into the market in a handful of weeks. We've been working with about 70 or so preview customers over the past year to year and a half. They've been running Cortex for most of that time. We put those customers into production back in August. So the first set of capabilities are solving the problem of how do you manage content? How do you recognize it? How do you capture it? How do you tag it? And how do you teach the cloud to use AI to read the documents for me so that I don't have to? Because there's just so much that people have to pay attention to now. How can we optimize the quality of your information, content, knowledge transactions so you can get back to doing the things that matter most to your success? So Cortex is doing those things that you mentioned, entity modeling, being able to look at digital assets like pictures, structured documents like forms and invoices, and unstructured documents like contracts to say, this looks like a purchase order, and I probably want to pull out the date, the supplier number, and the dollar value so that I can do something important with it. And that doing something important may be as simple as tagging it so that my teammates can find it later. Or it may be sending it into an alert and approval cycle so that the right business processes can be automated. Or it may be attaching the right levels of compliance policy to it so I can minimize risk and maximize people's confidence in the security they have around their documents.
No, look, I'm excited for the future of Project Cortex and where it's going and how it can bring people together based on communities of practice. I remember I used to do a presentation on knowledge management back in the days when I used to work with OpenText, and we used a story about the U.S. Postal Service where more than 60% of the U.S. Postal Service back in, I think it was 2006, was about to retire, and there was no way for them to grab the tacit knowledge of someone being able to know that there's a dog at that gate over there, so you need to cross the road to carry on. So harnessing that employee knowledge, because it was a thing, right? And with what you said, Chris, and with what you said, Rebecka, on how you are actually harnessing knowledge based on daily patterns, because that's what it's about, right? It's being able to map out a pattern, and you'll be able to build statistical analysis and trend mapping on specific patterns based on what the usage and what the user is doing every day inside of Word, inside of Outlook, inside of Teams, inside of Yammer, inside of SharePoint, inside of OneDrive. And you are able to surface that data so that you can give organizations a better view of how to manage, mitigate, and administer not only their intellectual property, but the property of the organization as well. So what's left, Rebecka? What's left for Microsoft this year when it comes to Project Cortex?
Oh, what's left? We've just started. This is just the beginning. We're getting ready to launch. I guess that's kind of the end of the beginning of a long journey, I think. I think one thing that you said earlier on that really resonated with me was ECM 2.0 or 2.0. And that's how I view knowledge in Microsoft 365, not just Cortex, but the entire suite of knowledge solutions, is that whereas traditional ECM is very content-centric, this is actually now people-centric. It puts the person in the center and it pushes the information. So where the traditional ECM is very much you have to know where to look for what and you have to go and find the information and pull it to you, we're now pushing it to you. We're making it available to you in the flow of your daily work, right? So you don't have to do all that context switching. And I think that is super, super important. And I think that's super powerful. So yeah, I guess that's where, that's where my heart and soul is. It's really helping people to not have to get frustrated, waste time, and just carry on with their work and have everything at their fingertips.
Yeah. Alistair, one of the things, I'm really hopeful about with Cortex, if you think about kind of the history with SharePoint or even OneDrive, is that no two people have the same way of approaching an information problem, if you will.
Yeah.
Some people store everything in OneDrive. Some people put things in folders in SharePoint. Some people use metadata. It's a very heterogeneous and in some ways fragmented environment. And so the power of Cortex is being able to create these common models that you can deploy anywhere you need to be able to impose a standardized way of classifying information so that I don't have to remember where to put it or to add these tags, or I can get all of that built for me, because enriching content is one of the important building blocks for being able to convert that content into knowledge. Earlier this year, we rolled out a bunch of modernizations to our taxonomy services, formerly managed metadata services, to allow you to manage classification and content types in a much more streamlined manner. And Cortex is bringing new capabilities to help administrators govern those processes. So all of this is helping impose order on information that's coming inside Microsoft 365. And we sort of have to acknowledge, we have many great partners like Xillio who are able to extend that transformation by taking information that lives off cloud or other clouds and bring them into Microsoft 365 to preserve, everything that was encoded in some of those legacy systems and make it more addressable. One of the things that we're doing alongside that is we know that you're not going to unify everything inside Microsoft, despite what we might ask for. And so we're also rolling out our new set of graph-based content connectors to allow you to remotely reach out and index information that might live in a file share or SQL Server or ServiceNow, and to bring that into the graph to make it searchable and usable. And soon we're going to introduce the rest of Cortex's capabilities for classifying, for exposing that as knowledge to remote content alongside the information that you have in Microsoft 365 today.
That was actually going to be my last words from your side, Rebecka.
Well, maybe one thing. Since in a previous life, I managed the user adoption and the business requirements for what used to be at least the largest SharePoint application internally in Microsoft. So a content and collaboration platform that we use in our professional services organization. And I am so happy to finally have technology that eliminates the need for me to understand and know a corporate taxonomy and have to waste time tagging stuff, because I'm also very lazy on a personal note. Like, I don't like to do stuff that doesn't immediately add value. And I do understand it adds value for me to tag stuff so others can find it. But if the system can do that for me, so I can spend my time doing something more, valuable, that's another thing that makes me super excited. And I think we should definitely call out, because I also know that taxonomies and getting people to use them or getting people to tag stuff, and for people to have to do that is frustrating on every level of the organization. So I think I want to call that one out.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Rebecka, for spending time with me on this webinar. And
we'll see you in 2021.
Great to see you. Be well.
Yeah. Take care.
Cool. Cheers, guys. Welcome to the series where we talk about all you need to know about Project Cortex and why Cortex is a better alternative for legacy enterprise content management services. And in today's episode, let's call it an episode, because I've got a good friend of mine, Simon Denton, on the call. Simon, just a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what your star sign is, what your favorite color is. I'm assuming it's blue.
Alice, you asked a little bit about me, right? Okay, but anyway.
Midget, yeah.
Hi, I'm Simon Denton. I'm the Productivity Applications Architect at a company called Mott MacDonald. I'm a global engineering company. So I'm responsible for all things Office 365, including the rollout and deployment of Project Cortex.
But you're an engineer, though, by trade, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm a civil engineer by trade. Up to about 4, 5, 6 years ago, I was building tunnels, roads and railways for real. So I've made that shift into the kind of virtual world of building things.
So your experience with Office 365 to date, you're doing Mott's got huge systems. I'm dealing with Mott in South Africa currently, and just having a look at the underpinnings of what makes up your organization. It's no small task to take on, to move anything anywhere, never mind rolling out something like Office 365.
Yeah, we have around 16,000 employees globally, about 140 permanent locations and 400 temporary locations, and 76 different domains. You name it. Yeah, it can be like a drunk spider's web. You're trying to find your way around it, right? There's not a lot of order in the chaos, but we worked super hard to try and straighten things out from day one. And I set that as a first principle, is we've got to keep this straight, simple, and as close to out of the box as possible to remove the potential for future complications.
But the size of your organization, you must have a lot of sort of content repositories that you have to maintain. If you've got 76 domains, I mean, you've probably got a spreadsheet that's printed, that's put into a fire-retardant safe, just so that you know if the world ends, right, you can go back to the safe and know what domains you own.
It's not a fireproof safe, Alistair. You remember the end scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, right?
Yeah.
And when they're wheeling the Ark into the great big storage, we do have facilities like that still, right?
Okay. It's like a bunker.
We do have located around the world. I mean, we've been operating for around 100 years now. So we have 100 years worth of engineering history, from almost carved on tablets, but blueprints, hand-drawn drawings, all the way through to discs the size of small cars, all the way up. So we have all that sort of information. So we have a lot of content. I mean, we've got about 340 terabytes in SharePoint at the moment. We've got another 300 or so in a legacy ECM. We've got, I can point to storage cupboards with 3, 4, 5 petabytes of offline storage, USB drives, tapes, discs.
Microfilm.
Yeah, microfilm, 5.25-inch discs, it's all there, right? And that's just in one office that I can point to. There's a cupboard with 2 petabytes of data just secured, right?
Yeah, that's crazy, right? But I mean, moving to the cloud, moving to Office 365, it must be a huge undertaking. What sort of impact has it had for you and also for the staff that you work with daily, and then also the greater 16,000 people in your organization adopting something like Office 365?
To be honest, I think it wasn't as difficult an operation as maybe people are led to believe, right? And I think, yes, we did focus a lot on the wiring behind the scenes and making sure that we didn't have a traditional hub and spoke network model. Now, it takes a long time to unpick that, but actually once you unpick that process, actually moving to the cloud is actually quite a straightforward process. Just get your data from your office to the nearest touch point with Microsoft and away you go. So actually the onboarding journey for our staff when we're moving from our legacy systems to Office 365, it was just a series of baby steps. We brought them on because we had made some of the changes to infrastructure behind the scenes. It was quite easy, actually. It was quite natural. And if we take the current context, it's been quite liberating. It's been amazing this year that we've been able to not only be able to support bring your own device from effectively from day one, but when situations change where we've had to ask our staff to work from home for extended periods of time, the business has hardly been interrupted through the process because they can use any device, the data's in the cloud, it's secure, it's all backed up, and we've kept things close to out of the box as possible. So there's little in the way of complications that we've introduced to get in the way. So it's not been, I hate this question because it makes me sound too smug. And I'm not smug. It's been quite easy, actually.
Yeah.
And
I suppose it's if you do the right planning and preparation up front, there's a logical flow of things. There's a logical steps that you take. There's milestones and measurements that it's a go, no go. So, I think also in your case, you've still got quite a bit of legacy on-prem. I mean, have you moved stuff to Azure?
Yeah, so we do have a relatively large on-prem footprint in terms of storage. We've moved virtually all of our virtual infrastructure is now in Azure. So we've worked really hard to unload our own data centers and push servers and things up into the cloud. We do have, say about 240 to about 300 terabytes of content still in our data centers associated with legacy HCM. So we're currently migrating that at the moment to a mixture of SharePoint for live content that people are still working on, and for the inactive content, because the ECM's been around for about a decade, that's going to Azure, and we're sending up Azure storage with a relatively complex migration process because we want to keep all the audit trails and all the rich information that goes with it. So, I would see by the end of 2021, the only real footprint we'll probably have in our data centers is for content that's needed for security purposes, the stuff you can sort of never put in the cloud, and things like border controllers and things like that when you're dealing with voice for Teams and things like that. We've had hardly any footprint in our own data centers.
So from a complexity perspective, when you start talking about you doing these crazy, these humongous migrations, terabytes and terabytes. I've dealt with customers who've got 100 terabytes and they don't know what to do. You're talking about petabytes. That will eventually get into it. And you mentioned earlier on you don't want to sound like you snobbish about demystifying all of this because of your planning, but it can't be that simple. With so much data, there must be so much metadata with it and all of those things. And you just bring it, I'll do it, right? I'll show you how to do it.
I think people get hung up on the hard bit is not the content itself, right? The actual volume of content. Because there's only real two decision points, right? Do you send that over the wire, and can I send that as quickly over the wire as possible without choking my existing connections, or do I lift and shift? And that's the easy. That is the easy bit decision point I feel with content. And one of the difficult conversations we had to have around that element was to say to people that we're moving content. It's not like when you're at home and your Xbox updates a game and it's a 400 gig game and it does it like this, doesn't it, right? This is corporate data, there's lots of checks and balances that networks do, and things don't flow as quickly as possible backwards and forwards. So once you manage that conversation, that decision point's easy. How much more wire can take, and then versus lift and shift. Now I've done lift and shift, I think I would continually advocate lift and shift. I think that's a much easier way, even with the smaller boxes. Just we've got them on rotation, so we just take a box, fill it up, send it off, get the next one, fill it up, send it off, and we're doing that every couple of weeks, and it's brilliant.
Okay.
The hard bit is what you do with the metadata. Which bits of metadata you keep, and where do you put it? And I took the decision that I wanted a complete chain of custody to the process. I wanted to know that when we touch the content, where we put the content, I wanted to pick up all the metadata. So the previous version histories, who's touched what, when and how. And I wanted to be able to store that, because then in 15 years' time, if someone came to me and say, well, someone built this, tell me who did it, when they did it, who accessed it, I can provide information. And the hard part of the process is determining how to get that data and where to put it. And actually, I very consciously decided to separate the content out. That will go to Azure storage, and then go to blob storage. And the rest of it, it's currently going to Azure SQL at the moment.
Yeah.
So probably too, but ultimately I think it's going to be Cosmos just for scale, and we'll switch over to that.
So you guys were featured during Ignite keynote last year with Satya. The impact of Microsoft talking about Project Cortex and all the AI baked into the back around entity modeling and entity extraction. What has your experience has been with Project Cortex, and how you are able to build that AI up from an ML perspective, so that you've got this body of knowledge that can do proper data extraction and entity extraction going forward into the environment that you have?
I think the Project Cortex as technology is really important, because we're a project delivery organisation. We deliver about 10,000 projects per year, and each of those projects is an information silo, and you've got to find ways of getting the good information out of those silos and respecting the security boundary and lifting it up. We had built our own sort of Cortex V0, which required our engineers to sort of volunteer information to be shared out. But what Cortex is allowing us to do is we scan across all of those repositories still, and actually indicate, well, actually this could be of interest, right? These suggestions, this bit of content could be of interest, and we can then reinforce and join that with the signals from the engineers who actually saying, actually, I want to share this, right? I want to bring it together. So we're finding Cortex, it does take some time to, I wouldn't say learn about the organisation, because it's not quite a learning entity yet, if you see what I mean. It takes a while for it to develop a picture with your assistance of what is appropriate and what is not. But it's turning into a great suggestion engine, and it's turning into a great way of understanding what the real pulse of the organisation is in terms of what we're doing. So we've been experimenting with bridge inspection records. So when we take, a customer will come to us and say, can you look at the maintenance of this bridge? Can you maybe breathe new life into it, expand its life? Here's a box full of paper drawings, documents. Scan them all, process them. There's 100 years worth of history, and what the engineers need to do then is pick out all the relevant salient points from that. So what we've been doing is conducting experiments using the content centers to look at, can we get the salient points from these PDFs or from the scanned images, and build a body of knowledge about the assets. This is not organizational knowledge, but knowledge about a particular asset, and then use the metadata that we generate from that.
Yeah, I think it's more, and we were speaking to KnowledgeLake earlier, about 2 weeks ago, about how KnowledgeLake complements something like Project Cortex. Because naturally, when you start looking at optical character recognition or any type of recognition, pick it, OMR, ICR, OCR, it's really about that form type recognition. There's AI baked into it, and it's going to identify this document as something. It could be a zonal stack on the document. So in your case, if you're doing some form of, let's identify this bridge, there would be a bridge ID that's been stuck onto all of these documents, and naturally you would go in search of that to bring that together. might be somewhere on the page. It's not zonal because it's unstructured content. And being able to read through that and provide suggestions based on that's a superpower that I haven't seen around, because as much as you can build intelligence to scanning the paper and extracting data, you still need to give it a template. Whereas with Cortex and the knowledge sense and the knowledge center stuff, it will do that for you automatically.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it's coupled into Power Automate, what I do like is, there are those solutions out there that they will OCR the scan your documents, but it's very much I'm probably doing them a disservice. It's very much like here's something we know about, like an invoice. Here's the output, and once you set it up, it just does it.
Yeah.
And actually, what we want to do is we think this is this, so we can set up some models for different types of documents, but then we want to have a process flow, and we want metadata to appear in different locations. The fact that you can use Power Automate, say, well, actually do a first skim of all the documents, move them into the right places. Once you move them into the right places, apply another model to those documents, and then extract data and put them into SharePoint lists or wherever. That's the real superpower, is that flexibility. It is just a building block.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I had a question about looking at complex migrations, and you've just simplified all of this by using the right sort of tooling, and also making sure that you do all the planning up front.
Yeah, I do have a simple block model, which is what we dealt with. That it is relatively simple. It fits on one page of A4 about how we take content from whichever repository, because when I set out the strategy for migration, I wanted something that was as agnostic as possible. I wanted something that if I moved legacy ACM in 2020, I want to be able to move something else in 2021 by just plugging the migration solutions into it, rather than getting told to do this, that, and working my way through. I wanted something to be able to offer migration as a service. So I want to actually reverse the flows. I want to be able to take stuff out of SharePoint and put it into Azure when it's getting old. Yeah. And so be able to turn the piece of paper upside down effectively and just run it back through the sausage nut. So it did take a little bit of thinking about, but it does break down to where do you want to put your metadata, how do you want to store it, how do you want to access it. Yeah. And I didn't want to do the really complicated stuff, and I think where people do get tripped up, I want to copy the permissions. I want to copy the permissions from the old stuff to new world. Right? Well, half those people probably don't exist. Is your security posture exactly the same as it was when you dreamt that one up? I don't think it is. Yeah. Keep it simple. Move it, put it in, and adjust.
All right, and on that note, I think that's it. Thanks so much for your time, Simon. And I'm going to miss you this year at Ignite, because we're all sitting at our desks delivering sessions, right?
Yes, we are. Yeah, I am going to miss you, and I'm going to miss my brother from down under as well. So yeah.
All right, well, thanks for your time, and we'll catch up with you soon. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah, cheers, Alex.
Welcome to all you need to know about Project Cortex. And on today's call, or webinar, whatever you want to call it, the show, episode of all you need to know about Project Cortex, we've got, how do I say your name? It's Sjoerd. Alkema, right?
Alkema, yes.
Alkema.
Yeah.
So Sjoerd, just a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? What is your favorite color in the world? Where do you see everything going?
Yes, man. So my name is Sjoerd. I'm from the Netherlands, and actually Sjoerd is a typical Dutch name. Quite hard for anybody else apart from Dutch people to pronounce. I'm the director of content services with Xillio. My favorite color, of course, is Xillio blue. I've been here with Xillio for 6 years, and responsible for all our migration services and whatever we do within content services area. And my background is in enterprise content management, which of course you know very well too, Alistair. I've been in that space for now 15 years, around 15 years. It's really where I started working in when I came from high school, you can say, or from university, of course. Yeah.
And now you work for a company that does these crazy, huge, monumental migrations from legacy ECM systems to something like SharePoint Online. I mean, that's a huge undertaking. And before before Rick had reached out and said, hey, come do some stuff with us, I did not know that this was possible. So traditionally, just tell me a little bit about migrating from a legacy ECM like a LiveLink or a FileNet or a Lotus Notes. I mean, I've done some Notes stuff, but I mean, it must be such a big thing for you guys to do.
It is. And indeed, so with my background, I also understand that all these systems have been around for quite some time. So they're really embedded and really connected to all the processes within these organizations. So they are quite complex, I would say, for sure. Mostly because of the history and how it has been implemented, and every one of them is customized, of course. That's typically what happened back in the days. So yeah, complex they are, but I wouldn't say that they are really difficult. I mean, if you know what you're doing, if you have the right approach, if you also make it important enough from the organization side, right? That's important. Then then it's doable. And I mean, we know we've done so many already. So that's one. What I wanted to add to that, I mean, it's doable. We've been doing it for quite some time. Also from legacy ECM to more modern ECM, of course. But what we see right now, especially with Microsoft being more ready with the whole Cortex, Project Cortex that's being launched, now it's really not that difficult anymore. And especially from the point of view from the organizations, because I mean, technically, if you have the right software, right approach, right people, it can be done, but it also needs to fit in the receiving system, right? It needs to fit there, and that's mostly where the real challenge is, we see. So that's also part of our consulting efforts to advise on that, and how are you going to do the mapping, restructuring, how are you going to do those workflows in your new system? My hope and my thinking for sure is that that's going to be so much easier with the whole Cortex situation in the future. What is very important is to start with an analysis of what there is in that system, what there is right now. So you could say that every migration follows an ETL approach, right? Extract. You need to get out the data, you need to transform, you need to do something with it, then load it into the new system. But what we feel that is very important is to put the A in between the E and T, right? So after extraction, you want to analyze, you want to do a discovery on what you have, and together with the customer right away, then you're going to see, how does this project look? So from the analysis, we typically define a detailed migration approach and a detailed migration plan. You want to see what is possible, what is not possible, where can we add value, where do we need to do restructuring, where can we clean up, where can we move these things to the portal that are active, or the others to an archive you want to set up in Azure. So that's typically all coming from the analysis. So that's the first step.
All right. Well, thank you, Sjoerd, for spending some time with us today, and we'll hope to catch you soon. Cheers.
Great. Thank you.
Well, welcome to all you need to know about Project Cortex. So just a little bit about yourself, where you are from, who you work for. Well, everyone can see that, your star sign, your favorite color. Yeah, pick one.
You got it. My name's Jason. I live in St. Louis. I work for a company called KnowledgeLake. I've been here for 15 years. I'm currently in charge of the product team, working with some amazing people doing some amazing work for our platform. So excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Speaking of paper, I mean that's my experience with KnowledgeLake from back in the early 2000s or 2007. Is paper still relevant today? I mean, that's a big question.
Yeah, for sure. The idea of the paperless office that we've all been chasing for decades is a great one and worth fighting for. But a lot of things are sort of outside of an organization's control. We think about the business processes that we help most customers with. Most of that content that drives those processes, invoices, claims, loans, hiring documents, etc., they usually originate outside of an office, right? They're created by somebody else or filled in or signed by somebody else, and we don't really have an opportunity to digitize those. I saw the other day there was a report globally, for the first time ever, we sent 50.3% of invoices electronically. For the first time ever. Electronically sent invoices outnumbered paper sent, but paper sent invoices are still 49.7%. If my math holds up there. So it's still a ton, right? But even those digital documents, right, they still need to be dealt with. Like, a PDF probably isn't going to be folded in half or have coffee spilt on it. So, there's an advantage there for sure. But that important information is still, it's the information that's critical to those business processes. They're still locked inside of that document, paper or otherwise. That information still needs to be liberated.
But it's not only, I used to call it back in the old days, I used to call it, it's a work object, right? It's no longer just about that physical piece of paper. It could be an electronic document that's come in that someone's used Adobe to fill in. And I've got a customer in the Eastern Cape in South Africa that still produces 100 million pages a year. So I don't think the physicality of the paper might disappear because someone's going to take a picture and upload it with OneDrive, but processing that object is still there. And for me, that leads into the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was when we look at what KnowledgeLake has done over the last 5 to 7 years around moving away from a traditional paper-based process organization to the stuff that you're doing around RPA. I mean, is that the motion that you see moving forward when it comes to what you're doing as an organization?
Yeah, I think, a couple of things. So first, just collecting paper and storing it electronically and making it searchable and findable, that has tons of value for sure. People on average, workers here in the United States still spend 30% of their time hunting down paper, hunting down information. So just the idea of being able to store a document digitally, have it as an official record, be able to find it easily, still highly valuable. But, I think the way we see the trend in the marketplace going is it's continuing to apply pressure around removing manual processes, right? Anything manual, anything a human has to do that's just sitting there typing keyboard, keying in data, whether that's indexing or classifying a document to be stored, or whether it's typing in information to an ERP system. Humans have much more valuable things to do with their day, right? They have much more to society to contribute than just sitting there and keying data. So I think, trends like RPA, workflow, automation, machine learning for, intelligent capture, I think those are the direction that we're heading.
And I mean, Project Cortex is quite an interesting take at where Microsoft is going with building out intelligent automation, more so than anything that they've ever done before. I mean, they've got the UI flows coming through. They're doing a lot of sort of entity modeling. A lot of the stuff that they're building is what traditional image capture solutions have been doing for the last 10 years, right? So we scan in a template and then we tell it to go interrogate this page, and we might use zonal OCR, we might use form type recognition, we might do object mark recognition to identify zones on a page, and then based on that, we build in we forward that onto a rules engine, and the rules engine says, go do this with that.
Right.
And we're seeing that come through with Cortex on the entity modeling side. So go find a salutation, and chances are the person's name is next to the salutation.
Right.
From a KnowledgeLake perspective, I mean, you're moving into the RPA space. You've got products in that space. How do you see KnowledgeLake complementing what Microsoft is doing in and with Project Cortex?
Yeah, great question. So I think KnowledgeLake is thrilled at the direction Microsoft is going. Specifically from the world of documents perspective, they're making great investments around unstructured documents. So KnowledgeLake's sort of core wheelhouse are what we would call structured and semi-structured type documents, right? Documents that are mostly laid out the same. So you think about things like a loan document or an invoice or an I-9 form. We would consider those like structured and semi-structured documents. Unstructured documents are really, really difficult to deal with, and Microsoft's making really great investments there. Think of a process like claims, right? With a claim, it often involves tons of letters, and somewhere in that letter is critical for the purpose of adjudicating that claim, and it's highly unstructured. Somewhere in that letter is a 10-digit claim number and a policyholder's name. And the work that they're doing to be able to identify that document, classify it, and go find that critical information inside of it is brilliant and much needed. And we're excited how it's going to enhance our offering. In the area of the knowledge management stuff, I think it's a really interesting new look at being able to aggregate data and provide information, not when a user has to go search for it, but without them even searching for it, just surfacing it when they need it right in front of their face. And we view KnowledgeLake as we're the delivery truck that drops off the raw material of documents and metadata to the refinery of Cortex to let the AI tool sort of refine it and machine it into from raw materials into insights.
Yeah, you still got to get the content in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Cortex only works with content in the silo.
Right.
That's not going to work with content outside of that. So I see huge value in being able to pre-stage content before it gets there with some form of metadata extraction so that it's able to amplify the rules engine that is Project Cortex from an AI perspective and ML perspective so that you can actually teach Cortex based on specific rules that your product actually pushes into SharePoint Online. SharePoint Online.
Yeah, amplification I think is the perfect word there, right? Is being able to take the data that we're able to suck out of those documents. We know that 80% of data inside of an organization is unstructured, right? 20% of it is the stuff sitting in ERP systems and CRM and things like that. Yeah. But that critical 80%, right? That's what Cortex is after, to be able to provide insights into what's sort of locked in there.
Yeah. Any final comments from you around where you see Project Cortex going? What are you excited about? Being that Inspire is around the corner, Ignite is around the corner, not Inspire. I keep getting the two mixed up.
Microsoft's a leader in the content services space, and I think Cortex is going to continue to accelerate them on that trajectory. Companies like Xillio and KnowledgeLake, I think we're proud to be part of that ecosystem and part of their success. If you read the Gartner report, it says, look, Microsoft's success in this space is largely due to its partner community. And that includes system integrators, that includes ISVs like KnowledgeLake and Xillio, that includes the MVP community like yourself. And they built a really great ecosystem, and we're excited to be a part of it. We've been doing this content management game around SharePoint for a long time. We pride ourselves on being one of the first to it. And I think sort of in closing, the overriding theme, I hope that customers walk away from this talk track, these legacy ECM systems that they have in place that haven't been updated in probably a year or two, and somebody probably looks at it as a house of cards, like, don't mention it, might fall apart. They're not that hard to replace. It can be done. And and on the other side of that is a new, modern, powered by machine learning and AI and RPA cloud platform that can really transform an organization, really increase their, velocity and innovation inside their organization. And I think a lot of people get nervous. It's, it seems dangerous. Like, well, we've been using that for so long. How do we just unplug it? It is possible. And the choice of KnowledgeLake and Microsoft is a safe one for the future. And, they can make an investment in this technology and know that they'll be protected. It's a good future choice, good future bet.
All right. Well, Jason, thanks for your time today, and we'll catch you somewhere in the world, hopefully soon, in person. probably like 2022 or something. Who knows? But thanks for your time, and we'll chat to you soon. Cheers. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks. See ya.
Well, thanks everyone for spending time with us today on all things Project Cortex. We hope that you've got a better feel for when wanting to move to Project Cortex, where Project Cortex is going, and also what tooling is available to assist you when moving into Project Cortex. Last words from your side, Rickert?
This was absolutely amazing. I mean, we heard so many fantastic quotes like enterprise content management was actually document content management. It was a departmental system to the worst part of ECM to the best part of ECM. The rebirth of knowledge management. Kind of the naming definition. I think this was an absolutely amazing webinar, and I think it is very clear that Cortex is an absolute game changer, and it will allow to change the way people work.
Well, thanks a lot for everyone that's stuck around for however long this webinar series is, and we'll hope to see you online or at a in-person event soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
And that's the top of the hour for us, or a little bit past the top of the hour. We're opening up for the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please drop it in the chat, and our moderators will field it for you. There is a question around, does Cortex work with an E3 license?
So Alistair, this is Ian. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome. I'll take that one then. Yes, Cortex absolutely works with an E3 license or an E5 license. There's additional licensing required for Cortex. You'll learn more about this tomorrow at Ignite when we do the final GA, but yes, you'll be able to use Cortex with E3 or E5.
There was also a question, I think Simon is Simon on? Yes, he is on. There was a question around CAM being imperative for small businesses as well as large, and the licensing model. I know there was some questions around specific licensing. Simon, from your side, just a little bit more about how Mott went ahead with working through the technology. I mean, you've been there from the beginning.
Yeah, I guess from a licensing perspective, we didn't think about that aspect. We wanted to find a solution that matched with our mission, which is creating opportunities through connected thinking. We found a product that would do that. So we started there. We worked through the journey on the understanding that there could be a risk at the end of the journey, that there could be some difficult licensing questions. So along the way, we've been building up the business case to license it appropriately. So big or small, I think it's a product that can be a real game changer. I think it's something that if you're a small organization with no knowledge management strategy or a large one, you can use Cortex as the Kickstarter project to leapfrog people who put a lot of effort into getting an approach to KM. I think you're going to get a really good return on your investment over a period of time. If you've got one, then it's going to be a great complementary product. It's going to really kick you on from that pretty rigid, regimental workflow-based process to that content people, that serendipitous discovery, those suggestions that really matter to your organization. So I think it will make a big difference.
Great, thanks for that response, Simon. Sjoerd, just a quick question for you. I know you're on the call. Both you and Simon have spent a lot of time in performing migrations. My biggest question has always been around the complexity of migrations, and strangely enough, both of you said quite a bit about making that easy. Your top 3 tips for helping customers move to Project Cortex from a legacy ECM system?
My top 3 tips. Yeah, good question. So I think, first of all, you should go deeper than just the content and just your folder structure that you build, right? Project Cortex is more. So think about all the workflows, all the forms, or the automation you have in your ECM. And that's also something you can capture with the analysis. So that's the first tip. So think of outside of that box, and then try to clean up where you can. I mean, it's been around so many years, so you can clean up. And although, of course, Project Cortex with all its capabilities can get a lot of value out of all the content there is, there's definitely an optimization there possible when you clean up, right? Duplicates, for instance, it's an easy one. And then in a migration, it's also time to really assess what you have and what you can already add in terms of tags and metadata that can be easily used in Project Cortex. So use your migration for that. So those are the 3 tips, I guess.
Okay, so my 3, the first one is whatever you do, keep it simple. It's quite easy to bring a lot of complexity and baggage with you. Focus on the things that really matter to you and the knowledge that matters to you, and put that into a live service that you are exposing to Project Cortex. The second thing is don't be surprised by what it's going to reveal, right? So it's going to tell you some things that you may not have expected. You're going to get a bit of serendipitous discovery. If you do move 240 terabytes of 10 years worth of history into SharePoint and allow Cortex to look at it with your new taxonomy, it's not the taxonomy that you had at the time, it's going to give you some different answers. So don't be surprised, it's going to tell you something different. And my final, my general migration tip is, in our humblest of experience, lift and shift works. Over the wire is over a lifetime.
Chris, if you are on the call, there's been a question around, does Cortex span all the 365 programs, Teams, Stream, and all the other things? I'm not sure if you are there.
Sorry, can you just restate that question? I'm sorry, it just dropped on me for a second there.
Does Project Cortex span all M365 or O365 programs?
So Cortex is available for to add into just about all Microsoft 365 licenses. There's a complete list of, I think, the 15 or 16 plans that it covers that goes in the licensing guidance. But yeah.
All right. Yeah, Rebecka did mention that it does cover quite a few products available in the stack as well. Anyone want to take this? Maybe Ian or even Simon, possibly. Is there lessons learned, best practices from the Project Cortex partners available to people that are interested in moving into or acquiring Project Cortex on how best to implement the technology? Is Microsoft driving that?
Yeah, I'll help with that. But on the previous question, really quick, Alistair, I think the question was not so much about the licensing as much as if Cortex works with Teams and Stream and the other products in the M365 portfolio, Chris. So maybe talk just a bit about that. Rebecka answered yes, but maybe you'd like to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so just to expand on that. So Cortex is based on SharePoint as the content engine throughout Microsoft 365. So when we say it works with just about every service, it's because just about every deployment of Microsoft 365 has SharePoint as a content engine. It is theoretically possible for you to have a Microsoft 365 license that doesn't include SharePoint, Teams, and all the rest. And so in those situations, there's not going to be a lot of value that Cortex could bring to the table, but that's why we're saying it's there for just about everyone.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so in terms of lessons learned and best practices, we have obviously a large set of partners with Xillio and KnowledgeLake being two of the best that are there to help. Other partners and customers, of course, work with Cortex, enable it, deploy it, and so forth. We've sent hundreds of people through training now for Cortex. The product isn't available yet, but we've sent many folks through training, and it will be available very, very soon. You'll get the announcement on that tomorrow at Microsoft Ignite. And we've also got a team of black belts that are available from Microsoft to help customers and partners as they get going with Cortex, get it deployed, get up to speed, and so forth. In terms of a written set of lessons learned or best practices, I think that's a great suggestion. I'm not aware of a written set of lessons learned at this stage of the game from our preview customers and the partners that have been in preview, but I think that's a great idea for us to put that together.
I can tell you that it's until we have a product that's been in the market for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, it's a little premature for us to state this is the complete set of best practices.
Yep.
There is a set of training materials we've been working on with our partners. We've delivered 2 rounds of training to partners like Xillio, like KnowledgeLake already. One of the things that we do cover that is readiness, and there's a couple of concepts that are in there, many of which have been touched on already on this webinar. One is kind of assessing your content and making sure that you have an approach to migrate what you can and to integrate the rest using our connector framework. The other thing to be mindful of is that Cortex works best when SharePoint is running through what are termed the modern experiences. As many of you know, SharePoint basically has 2 page models. The classic model, which is derived from the original on-premises version of SharePoint, which is still there, still runs, still supported, but it doesn't get innovations. So things like Cortex work best when the user interface is in what's called the modern experience. I would also say in general, what has been emerging as a best practice, which is a little bit different than what we would have said 6 months ago, is to allow Cortex to essentially mine content, to look for knowledge throughout almost all of your organization's content from the get-go. But you definitely still want to take a phased approach to how you introduce it, both in terms of sets of topics and sets of users. Turning Cortex on and having highlights start showing up for 40,000 people all on day one leads to lots of questions like, hey, there's a highlight in my page, and when I edit it, I can't remove it. And so it's just, it sort of goes without saying that part of the change management approach is to have follow a recommendation of starting with a core set of adopters and building up from there.
We've got a few more questions from Anil. As far as knowledge management is concerned, and considering that Microsoft technology or the tool stack, what does good look like? And I suppose that comes back to measuring what the best practices are out there and available to organizations, and also seeing what other organizations are actually doing with the tech. But Anil is very interested in getting everyone that's on this call's views on what does good look like when it comes to deploying Project Cortex.
I'll go first. I guess the what does good look like for us is a topic's a topic wherever it may appear. Ultimately, I mean that's what good looks for us. So ultimately, is something tagged in Yammer called idea that's tagged in SharePoint called idea, and you've got glue that links it all together. That's what good looks like. What does good also look like? The fact that the way we describe and understand the organisation matches with the way the system feels it needs to describe the organisation as well. And then finally, I guess the what does it look like is the delivery of just-in-time knowledge and information to people when they need it, on the medium they need it, at the time that they need it. And Cortex very much is part of that engine room to do it. So that's what good looks like for us.
Look at
Simon, hey, Jason here, if I can. I think that's a difficult question to answer. I think you did a great job summing that up, because what does good look like? Well, it doesn't look like anything that we've seen in the past, right? From my perspective, it's good looks like my users aren't having to go find information. They're being delivered information. I love the term used, sort of just in time, right, when they need it. And so it's less than what it looks like and more of like, what is the behavioral shift that my organization gets from the knowledge management stuff.
Yeah, and knowledge management doesn't feel like hard work. I guess that's another good feeling, right?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, great point.
Rebecka, from your side?
Yeah, hi Anil. Nice to meet you in person almost. We've chatted throughout this on LinkedIn. I think something that's really important to always remember is that when we're talking about knowledge and we're talking about using knowledge effectively, productivity, all of that, technology is not the entire answer, right? It's really important that we think through what are the business problems we're really trying to solve. What is the end-to-end knowledge strategy? What are we trying to achieve? Why is it important, and how is it important that people can get to the knowledge, right? There are no silver bullets. There's never a silver bullet for anything. So thinking through that and looking at what you already have and how you're using that, and then adding Project Cortex to accelerate and magnify and make those already made investments so much smarter, by the ability to surface topics, by all the AI and all the machine teaching stuff. I think that's my best recommendation and my best advice.
It is an interesting thing. How long's a piece of string? Where do you start? Where does it end? How do you bring together your knowledge economy and your knowledge assets inside of your organization so that it's qualifiable and also quantifiable? And we talk a lot about that. There was also a question around how to teach the AI. So what are you doing? Should you bring in subject matter experts? And Rebecka, you were leaning into that question as well as Naomi. Naomi, you mentioned that there's a feedback mechanism for organizations to look into that.
Yeah, one of the things that we wanted to do was to make sure that partnership between people and AI was very strong. So as Rebecka said, there is no silver bullet. This is not about technology. This is about AI trying to help you basically be more productive. And so one of the reasons inside of your organization that you might want to do things like crowdsourcing the confirmation of a topic. Is it really a topic within your organization? And you might want to have lots of opinions on that very quickly so that you can get your knowledge base up to speed. And so one of the areas that we've invested in a lot is to have on each topic card, topic answers that serve up in search, is to make sure that feedback mechanism is there so that folks can give quickly input of like, is this a topic? Is this resource that's been connected to this topic, does it look right? Because we're just suggesting things, right? It's an AI system that's helping you to suggest there. And so with that feedback mechanism, everybody has a voice essentially inside of the organization and can help to make it better and to do it in a very lightweight way, which is an important point that Simon made of like making sure that it doesn't feel like a chore. It's just a yes, no, quickly answer on a question. And that really helps the entire knowledge base get better.
Look, I think back in the old days with Microsoft Office SharePoint Server or MOS 2007, Microsoft bought a company called Fast Search. And we saw a lot of what we're talking about now with keywords and best bets and fast search from a weighting perspective when you could weight a compound term come to the fore now. And it's great to actually see how all of the technology and the investment in technology all the way back to something like SharePoint 2007 is now coming through in an automated fashion to assist organizations, where in the old days you'd have to sift through a thesaurus and have a look at what terms have been used and the relevancy of that and the hit list relevancy of it. When you came back to looking for content, the content is now presented to you based on the usage patterns and also the suggestions from people inside of the organization. And that's coupled with the AI in the back end of Project Cortex to deliver a much richer user experience when it comes to the findability and the accessibility of information inside of your organization. And like Simon says, using the feedback loop, we get into a nested loop, and that information is provided to us quite efficiently and effectively. I like the option of all the adaptive cards that are coming through inside of the topic cards and how that information is actually presented to users. And it's going to take time for the AI to learn your organization. So how do we sift through, in Simon's case, petabytes of content inside of your organization, whereas you might have 100 terabytes. So how do you teach the AI to learn that content? And as you grow, I mean, we've seen it a little bit with Delve and the other Insight tools inside of Microsoft 365 push information to you, as well as how Cortana suggests specific things. And we're going to see that now attached to your unstructured data that's stored inside of SharePoint, bring you that rich knowledge economy and also provide you with some sort of information portal into things that you would not necessarily think about because it's not surfaced because it's inside of a document. I think there's one more question coming through, again from Anil. What does Anil say? I think it would be great to help customers and potential customers if it could explain our content for all Office 365 applications could be used. Yes. Two, what good looks like, again, and then also what licenses would be available. Not so much. You leave everything to the user, to using their imagination and guessing what. Anyone want to take that question that I've just published in the Q&A?
I'll try to. It's multi-part, of course.
Yeah.
So again, I think what good looks like, I think Chris, Naomi, and Rebecka all touched on it. The one thing I would add is while Cortex has magical capabilities, of course, it's not on its own magical, right? You still need people involved in part of the process. Naomi really hit on that, but I would reiterate that. I think what success looks like inside of an organization isn't just that Cortex goes through and sifts through all your content and so forth, but it really looks like people getting engaged and working around the tool and the technology, and moderating things, curating things, sharing things, etc. Right? That's really the whole point. Otherwise you're just saying, hey, let the AI figure it out, and it will, of course, go out and find things and mine things and so forth, but you still want humans engaged. So I think a successful deployment of Cortex, a year from now, you look back and you say, hey, look at all these things that the AI did, but also look at all the things that the people did. This rallied the people, got them interested, got them, working with this, sharing the knowledge that they knew, curating it and so forth, right? I think, when we look back, the most successful organizations will be the ones where they have people that engage around this. And the ones that are not very successful will be the ones that just said, oh, I bought this thing, it's going to fix all my problems, right? You can look back over the last couple decades of people trying to deploy knowledge management tools, and without the people helping and working with it, those deployments did not go particularly well, right? The other question about how Microsoft could explain how content from all Office 365 applications could be used within Cortex. All that content from other Office 365 applications, whether that's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, what have you, the thing, as Chris mentioned earlier in a question, is it's all stored under the covers in M365, in the content services system of M365, which is SharePoint. That's also what Project Cortex is built on. So just natively, it's going to be able to go and look through that content, of course, respecting the security that's around that content. We're not going to expose things to people that don't have access to it and so on. But the content that you create in other applications that all get stored in Microsoft SharePoint under the covers as a part of M365, stored in people's OneDrives and shared and so forth. All that content will be, accessible to Cortex to go and mine and so forth. Again, respecting the security that's in place on that content. In addition to that, content that is not in M365 can also still be connected to Cortex using the search connector technology that we are deploying with Cortex. So Cortex provides the ability for you to go out and index content and other sources like file shares and ServiceNow and a whole bunch of different sources, hundreds of different sources when you look at all the partner connectors that are out there and so forth. So while we still think the best place for all your content is in M365, and Xillio and KnowledgeLake will help you move all that content into M365 so you get all the value, you can also connect to content that's outside of M365 as well.
Look, another thing that's also come up around best practices. I think it's difficult to answer. One, there's will be a lot of case studies being published around specific industry verticals and how they use tech. That, for me, is the big thing. You can't go into fast-moving consumer goods and deploy Project Cortex and expect it to work exactly the same way as in petrochemical, oil and gas, or in the financial services industry. So there will be use cases for specific industry verticals, because the content that's stored in a retail store or in a retail organization is different to the content that's stored inside of a financial services organization. So only time will tell where we build out this body of knowledge around case studies. Simon's got a case study around Mott MacDonald, and they're an engineering firm, but that's going to be vastly different to someone like H&M using SharePoint for whatever purposes they are going to be using SharePoint for. So that's, and yes, Anil, working with independent KM consultants, definitely something that organizations like Xillio and KnowledgeLake and everyone else does around getting best practice methodology out there. Last question was from Andre. How do they sign up for Project Cortex training?
Yeah, so Chris and Rebecka, obviously we've done training for all of our partners, and we've done training for Microsoft employees and so forth. What's the plan for training for customers? How do they get trained?
Should say that we should start with all the great content we have at Ignite this week. So
yep,
that would be
exactly.
my first advice, right? So starting tomorrow, you should be able to get access to a whole bunch of different sessions that we have coming out for Ignite, and that will help you to get a little bit under the covers in terms of understanding how the functionality is built on the content understanding and the topic experiences piece of it. And then basically we'll have more documentations coming out. And then, of course, a shout out for the Content Services Partner Program that Chris runs, because that's a great opportunity as well for partner companies to engage.
I'm going to put an announcement in the Q&A here. It's a link to all the different sessions for OneDrive and SharePoint and Stream and Teams and Cortex at Ignite. So we've compiled kind of a list of all the different sessions that folks should check out this week at Ignite. And of course, a large focus of that is on Project Cortex. So you should definitely go, watch the keynote that Jeff Teeper's going to do, and then dig into all the sessions that we have on knowledge discovery and content intelligence and expertise in knowledge networks and connecting people and knowledge with expertise and on and on and on. We have a bunch of sessions this week, and those are all highlighted in that page that I put in the chat.
Great. Any last questions from anyone? I think we have exhausted all the questions from everyone that's attended. Nope, nothing left. Well, then I'm going to close out. Thank you, everyone that stuck around for the Q&A and everyone that actually attended this. I think it was an hour and 9-minute multifaceted, multi-pieced webinar on all you need to know about Project Cortex. Thank you to the panel for the moderator, well, not the moderators, that's me. Thank you to the panel of experts that have decided to join us from across the globe. We've got people from almost every time zone. I'd like to thank on behalf of Xillio, the Microsoft team that's been on here, Microsoft partners, and also KnowledgeLake for getting involved in putting together a really, really great session. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Cheers.